Technology. We should be on page 1. My emulator isn't working, but this thing basically gives you the tricks on how to do it. First thing you notice is window here. Do this, you go into your window key and set your Xmin and Xmax and Ymin and Ymax equal these things. Now this comes back in. How to do it? First thing you do is find the vars key. Then you do your left till you get to Y vars. You hit this, and then 1, Y1. Okay? So that's the first thing you ought to do to set this thing up. So now what we're going to do is look at vertical translations on here. So what we should be doing is putting in Y1 equals to X plus 1. Okay, well that line will look like this. Okay? Now, you notice you got down here. This you find in your Y equals key. You punch Y equals, and you put the thing in exactly like it shows it here. Okay? This will go into Y1, and then Y2 will look like this. What this does is move this graph up 2 units. So it's going to look like this. So this is Y2, and the red one is Y1. Okay, so now you come back in, you leave Y2 the way it is, but we're going to change Y1 to Y equals 2X squared. That's 0, 0, 1, 1, 2, 4, 2, 4. All right, but again, we're going to be shifting up 2 units, so everything goes up 2. And it should look like that. Okay, now you come back in, you leave your Y2 alone, but you put this in for Y1. You should recognize this as being a rational. It's going to look like this on the original. But what we're going to do now is we're going to move everything up 2 units. So now instead of this approaching 0, it's going to approach 2. It's going to look like this and like this. The whole thing has just been shifted up 2 units. Okay, so now we come back down. And we're doing the same basic things we did above, except you go back into Y2 now, and instead of a plus 2, you do a minus 2. Okay, so my original function looked like this. What this does, it will shift me down 2 units. So now instead of my transformed, or my Y2 being above me, this is my Y2. It's been moved out. Again, we do the same thing, except you change your Y1 to this one. It's going to get you this. And then we move it down 2 units. Now your calculator will actually do all of this for you. It will come back in, and if you set Y2 up like that, and you've got your vars and your Y set up, then once you enter this into Y1, it should just calculate these back off for you. All right, our rational, there's our parent. Now instead of moving up 2 units, I'm going to move down 2 units. It's going to look like that. So generalization. What happens to a graph when you add a constant to the function rule? And the answer is it shifts it up or down. Okay? It shifts it up if you're adding. It it shifts it down if you're subtracting. All right, now we're going to talk about horizontal translations. And again, you're set up with your calculator the exact same way. And you guys can come in and try a few of these before you start off on your other one when you're in class. Matter of fact, I will encourage you to. But you notice our function rule looks a little bit different here. Okay? So we want to come back into y2, and now you're going to have y1, and you notice we've got the x minus 2 inside the parentheses. Okay? What this does is it will give us a horizontal shift. So when you come back in and you do this guy, it's going to look like this. But it's going to take this point here and it's going to shift it 2 units to the right. So your new one will look like this. And with lines, it's very difficult to tell a horizontal from a vertical shift. However, with parabolas, it's going to be pretty obvious because our parent function looks like this. We're going to move this thing 2 units to the right. So a new parent function, or the daughter function, is going to look like that. Same thing with the rational. Only now this thing right here gets moved over 2 units to the right. So it's going to look like this and like this. All right. So the next thing we do then is we're going to go down and we're going to change y2. So now instead of subtracting, we're going to add. Okay? So you go into y2 and you put this in. Again, go in here. Here's my parent function. Except that this time, when you graph it, you should notice that it's going to move it 2 units to the left. Okay, again, with linear, it's hard to tell the difference. Parabola. It's much easier to tell what's going on. So I moved it 2 units to the left. For the rational, there's my parent function. I move this over 2 units. So it looks like this. So what happens to the graph when you replace x with x plus a? It translates the graph horizontally or left and right. It moves it right when you're subtracting. It moves it left when you're adding. Okay, so the last page I'm going to do for you, we're going to go in and take a look at vertical dilation. Okay, on this one, we're going to come in and you're going to change your y2 to 3 times y1 of x. Okay? And again, we've got our parent here. Now, what happens is we're going to steepen this thing up. So it's going to look like this. Now, let's take a look at our parabola. There's our parent. However, when you multiply it by 3, it squeezes it down. This is basically a vertical stretch. If you have trouble with this, think about this as being like a slingshot, where you're holding this part, and then these parts are what you pull apart. As you pull these back and hold this steady, these two parts grow closer and closer together. Okay, and same idea with the rational, although it's much harder to see. Here's my parent. This guy basically gets squeezed closer and closer to zero. All right, so now we'll come down, last one then. You notice what we're doing here is we're changing Y2 now where it's 1/3. Okay. For the linear, what it's going to do is make my slope much less steep. For the quadratic, it's actually going to fatten it up. And then I had this one backwards. These should be coming out. These should be out like this. And on this one, on the rational, this is when it gets closer to zero. It pushes it in closer to the origin. So again, my generalization, the graph is stretched vertically if A is greater than 1. It gets compressed vertically if A is bigger than 0 but less than 1, or it's a fraction like what we had on this one. The remainder of these are for you guys to do in class.